Hi, it's the City Savvy Show. I'm Kristen Erner, and I'm here with Daniel Hicks, lawyer extraordinaire. I have been waiting for this one for a while. Dan is part of our team. When we say team, we have mortgage agents, we have Fitigu, we have lawyers. We try to incorporate service. Service is a big thing, and a lot of times lawyers are not considered a service. You know, they're a necessity. And we find with you that you've been marvelous with our clients. You know, we talk about you. We've incorporated Dan within our listing presentations. How did you get into law, Dan? And thank you, by the way.
Well, actually, I was going to be a doctor, actually.
Wow.
Yeah, I was going to be a plastic surgeon. And I was on a waiting list at U of T. I was on a 4-year free tuition scholarship for Latin and Greek.
Wow.
Why I took that, I don't really remember why. And I applied to law and I got in. And I had no regrets.
Wow.
No regrets.
And how long have you been a lawyer for?
42 years.
Wow.
That's a long time.
You know, I've been in the business for almost 33 years, and we've encountered a lot of different lawyers. And until we happened upon you from our neighbor, Kassabian Law, when you joined the firm, we were so impressed. And
it's nice to you.
Thank you. We were so impressed that we, you know, during our listing presentation, we always try to talk to people about, you know, we're going to eventually sell your home and there's going to be a close, or you're going to buy a home and there's going to be a close. And we try not to recommend just one lawyer, but we try to encourage them to use the right lawyer. And in your case, you are the right lawyer because you have legs. You're like a bulldog. When something goes wrong, people don't think about things going wrong in a transaction. And that's the one thing that, you know, I always would like people to know. As a buyer or a seller, what are two of the biggest mistakes that they can make when purchasing or selling their homes?
From a realtor's point of view, I guess sometimes people overvalue their properties, and that may be the biggest problem. And that's why somebody, a professional like you, has to come in and say, you know what, this is what we think you can get for this property.
Right.
And we can market it and we can get you a good price. We may get you more, but you tell them the honest goods. And those honest goods are, people can deal with reality, I think.
Sure. And I think you're saying that, and sorry to interrupt you, you're kind of saying that from the perspective that if you oversell your property, it's got to close, right? Because the banks, they're not going to lend you money on value that's not there, right?
That's exactly right.
And so do you see that a lot where, you know, the funds don't come in because of overpricing or overselling?
We're seeing some now because of the adjustment in the marketplace.
Sure.
And what people want to hear what they want to hear, but they need to hear the truth.
Right.
And they need to have a realistic value. Because if things are adjusting in the marketplace, they need to know that, not to be told after.
Right.
I was a politician for 9 years, a school trustee. And the one thing I learned is never raise somebody's expectations because you're going to drop them. And that's a very big mistake. You're better just to go in with the goods, and this is the way it is. And you've got them because they know you're telling them the truth.
Right, right.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a value proposition for you and for us, because in the end, you make us look good. Right? Like, because, you know, if we never set the bar too high. We always try to make people, you know, have realistic expectations. What we find is we always try to tell, you know, sellers and buyers that you have to pay the right price for a property or it won't close. And if it doesn't close, that's not good for anybody, right? Mm-hmm. I just saw a property close to our home that sold for 2.6, and it just went back on the market 3 months later because obviously it didn't close.
Right.
And that becomes a problem. We've had one situation with you represented, and we're going to talk about estates and wills and all that stuff, which you're an expert at as well. We had a situation last year in November. We were supposed to close. We didn't close until I think end of December. It was an estate sale. And you made it happen, and it's important because you were relentless on you know, trying to contact the lawyer. Now you had previous you had a previous relationship with the same lawyer where you had the same problem.
Yeah, yeah.
and so you kind of knew how to navigate. And it is super important that when you're using a lawyer, that you find somebody that knows how to navigate, because when you're in rough waters, we really, really, really need you to be there for us. It's our job to sell the homes and the right homes at all times, but it's your job to complete the transaction. When it comes down to somebody, they don't close, the funds are not there, what's the first thing? What's your first reaction?
Well, you want to save the deal.
Right.
You want to make the deal work. So the first reaction is to pick up the phone and say, what's going on? Because very often when we don't hear, it's the very day of the closing.
Right.
So, you try to facilitate and try to make sure the deal will close for everybody's sake.
Absolutely.
Because somebody went to a lot of work to put it together. There's expectations, and maybe the problem's simple. It may not be simple.
Right.
But somebody has to address it. And very often we find with other lawyers that they don't address it.
Right.
And they don't tell us.
Right.
But I mean, most deals close. But you're right. When there's a problem, there's a problem.
Absolutely.
It has to be dealt with.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that's why we've, J-Cell and I have relied on your services for that reason, that we know you're going to get the deal done. I don't think we've ever had a time where we've had to put it back on the market, which is good, because great. That costs people money. Yeah. Because what ends up happening in the listing that I had just mentioned in my neighborhood that didn't close, I can see there's a reduced commission. They're probably under duress because they've bought another property. Mm-hmm. I mean, there's a lot that goes into it, and it's kind of a pyramid effect, or a domino effect.
Oh, it is, definitely.
Where it affects a lot of deals, because, then your transaction that you just purchased doesn't close, and then the one that they've purchased doesn't close. So there's a lot of responsibility on your shoulders. And so that's the importance. And that's why, when I set out to have Dan, sit in on this podcast, is that I want people to be really informed that you really need to pick the right lawyer, because don't go for the lawyer that's, $1,095 or $995 inclusive just because they're cheap. You get what you pay for, just like you do when you choose the wrong realtor. You get what you pay for. And so, to basically close that part of it off, using Dan has been fantastic for our business. You're a good team member as far as we're concerned. So tell us, in your opinion, then, why should people use a full-service law firm? And I'm not just being specific to you.
No, just generally.
Just in general.
When somebody phones us up and says that they can, get a deal for $1,000, and including title insurance. The title insurance we know is $700.
Right.
There's nobody. What professional can actually put the time in and do a deal for $300 or whatever? Nobody's going to do that. I had a controller once, because I was in private. I had a business for years and practiced law, and my controller used to say, "You want to pay peanuts? Hire a monkey." You need to hire somebody that's going to look after you properly. Right. And so there are things that are not possible. Right. And so what you're going to find is generally, not specifically, generally, if somebody is charging very low fees like that, you will probably never meet them. Right. Somebody will be in the office who's doing it, who's taking the responsibility, and somebody who is really possibly capable, but they're not supposed to be doing it. Right. Because there's a professional responsibility. Absolutely. So, people are going to do what they want to do, and they're going to pay what they want to pay, but I think value. You want fair value. If you shouldn't expect that you're going to get the biggest bargain on earth, because every time I get a bargain, it costs me money. Right. Right. You know what I mean? Absolutely. Yeah. That's always, don't do me any favors, because it always costs me money. I'll pay fairly for what I'm going to get, and I expect good service and good stuff, and without issues. Excellent. And you mentioned title insurance. What is the importance of title insurance? Well, this is an interesting one, since we're talking about this one. Years ago when I started, there was no such thing as title insurance. Right. And then gradually the lenders started to say, yes, we want title insurance. So what would happen in the older times, I don't like the word old, but anyways, years ago.
Right.
So if something went wrong in the deal and there was a lien missed or whatever, then the client could come after the lawyer because they certified title. They gave an opinion. Now the difference is, and the lenders insist on title insurance now. So what happens is if something goes wrong, the title insurance company then looks to the lawyer. They pay the client, and then they go after the lawyer if there's negligence. So it's like the circle has changed, but it all comes back to who's doing it. And I had Stewart Title come in. We actually used First Canadian, but we had years ago. I had Stewart come in. They said, we want to audit your files. I said, what do you want to audit my files for? Well, we want to take a look at your title searches. And I said, well, those files are private. They were not supposed to, although there really wasn't anything in them that they wouldn't have known about anyways, because they would have insured. So I said, well, if you could tell me what exactly are you looking for? Well, we'd like to see if you actually did the title searches. Oh, I said, well, go ahead and look. I said, why would you think that I didn't? She said, because we're auditing a lot of people, and a lot of the lawyers are taking the position that we're buying title insurance. They don't have to search.
Right.
So that's crazy. That's crazy because the title insurer is relying on the lawyer, as is the client.
Right.
So yeah, it's but they're risk adverse.
Absolutely.
Insurers don't like risk.
Right.
And they really don't like paying.
No.
But they do. They actually do if there's a problem.
Right.
And it can be an unforeseen problem.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's a necessary. So it has to be done. You need to have title insurance. So that's again why your fees are where they are.
Well, the lender. Well, yeah, we treat that as a disbursement.
Right.
So and I think it's really important the distinction. So a lawyer makes a fee.
Right.
But the disbursements out of pocket are on top of it.
Right.
So they can't control that. And we don't get that. We actually pay it out.
Right.
So if we want to do the searches properly and we want to get title insurance, which we have to, and these things, it's going to cost. Even there's a software charge for using that service.
Amazing.
And I think that, well, it is what it is. And Dye & Durham bought up Conveyancer, they bought up Stewart Assist, and they bought up some apparently Australian company that was going to come into Canada and be their competition.
Right.
And suddenly the file cost went from $30 or $40, now it's $249.
Right.
But we can't control it.
Right.
But it is a cost.
Absolutely.
And what happens is either you show it in your bill, which makes the bill higher, or you show it on the trust ledger. But one way or another, the client's paying.
Right.
So you can play with bills.
Right.
But the ultimate, what we say to the person is that asks us for a price. Say, we're going to tell you what it's going to cost you.
Sure.
We're not going to play games here. If you don't like it, you know in advance.
Right.
You're not going to find out later that we told you it's $1,500 where it's really $2,000.
Right.
There's no point to it.
Yeah, there's no sense hiding.
And it's not true.
No, exactly.
So, it does cost. And if you want it done properly. Now, the only thing I have to defend the title insurers. It's not like they don't do anything, because they do. So we don't have to do a tax certificate search because it's covered. We don't have to do building and zoning search. It's covered. We usually don't, but we always do a tax certificate search because I don't want the problem 6 months later that the taxes are unpaid and then we have to claim on title insurance. So we are actually doing it to protect the client because they don't really need the aggravation. For $75, you're spending $1.5 million for $75 more. Come on.
Right.
We won't worry about it.
Right. That brings back a stupid thought. My parents recently bought a motorhome for $238,000, and they cheaped out on a mattress for $800. And I thought the same thing, and I thought, wow, that's what are you doing, right? But anyways, it has nothing to do with this conversation.
No, that's a good one.
But you did talk about disbursements. Okay, we're going to talk about, and when you said disbursements, because I had mentioned capital gains, and I know capital gains really has nothing to do with you, because that's an accountant question. But
you can ask me.
Yeah. So capital gains, the way that doesn't come out of the disbursements, and you're going to explain what a disbursement is. That comes out during tax season, correct?
It does if there's capital gains.
If there's capital gains. And capital gains are on investments second properties, what have you, not on principal residence.
Not on a principal residence so far. Not on a principal residence.
So far,
Yeah.
so far.
And the person that actually does it, we will not see them in power for long.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree.
They'll be blown to another planet, I think. They'll be gone.
So that's amazing because it's a great investment for people with their principal residences, not having to pay that capital gains. But how does capital gains work? And I've cautioned you. If you want me to ask you the question, you said it's okay.
Mm-hmm.
How does it work? So I've bought an investment for $500,000. A couple of years later, I go to sell it for $750,000. How does the capital gain work?
Well, actually, it's very easy. But first of all, the principal residence is your one tax-free vehicle. So everybody...
No more tax shelters.
Well, that's right. Everybody should at least have a home.
Right.
I mean, instead of paying rent or whatever, you're sitting in it and something, you're enjoying it.
Right.
It's the best investment in the world. You're sitting in it, you're enjoying it, and it's going up in value, and the increase in value is tax-free. I mean, where do you get that? Right? That's the best deal in the world. So somebody buys a secondary property, like you said, $500,000, $750,000 they sell it for. They have the ability to add on the capital improvements, so if they do a new roof or whatever. So they also can add the expenses that they've paid out, subject to whether they wrote them off, like a rental property.
Sure.
So in a rental property, you'd have a schedule in your income tax. You'd put in the gross receipts, and then you take off your property tax and your insurance and your utilities if you're paying them, and maintenance and all the rest of it. And you may end up with a loss. That loss is directly deductible from regular income. So it's a great vehicle. It's a great way to reduce your income. Plus, you're also getting a capital appreciation. So what happens is, what you don't include there would be capital items, like a roof or new plumbing or renovations. So you can either depreciate them or they add to the cost base. So let's say you put $100,000 into the property. It's $500. It's now $600. You sell it for $750. The difference is $150. The taxable capital gain. The capital gain is $150. The taxable is half of that. So you're getting a free ride for $75,000. And then whatever your taxable rate is applied to that, you pay.
Right.
So it's actually secondary properties and rental properties can be very advantageous.
Right. Of course.
But that's why people want to buy more of them, because they're deducting off their losses, and basically the government is sort of financing you
Right.
as you make money, which that in itself should make you feel happy.
Absolutely. And I think you could probably ask 5 different accountants and 5 different lawyers and get 5 different answers. I think, but that's probably the most common answer that I've ever heard. So that's a very direct answer. So we talk about investments. So we could move to wills and estates, and the importance of having a will on an estate. If you inherit a property, is there a capital gain on that?
Okay, that's a good question, because I deal with this every day. So somebody passes away, and until the moment they pass away, they have a principal resident exemption. The Income Tax Act says that when someone passes away, they're deemed to have immediately before death have disposed of everything. It's like you sold everything. So you sold your principal residence, well, there is no tax.
Right.
Your RIFs collapse. This is payday, actually, for the government, because all the money you put into RIFs and RRSPs flows completely back into income.
Right.
Because you deducted the full amount. Now you're going to include the full amount. Your stocks, your bonds, secondary properties are deemed to have sold it, so your capital gain. So everything goes into the final return. So that's all tax paid there. So what happens is the estate starts out, and that fair market value at death becomes the new cost base for the estate. So the properties is at the death of the person was $1 million. Mm-hmm. So the estate takes the property at a cost base of $1 million, because although they didn't pay tax at principal residence, that's the cost base. You then sell the property 6 months later for $1.5 million. Well, that an estate can't have a principal residence. So that becomes, there's a capital gain on it.
Yeah.
There's taxable. But I mean, if you're going to make $500,000, half of it's tax-free, and you have to pay some income tax, I mean,
What's the harm?
well, I'd rather have the money than,
Right.
like no capital gains.
Right.
It's not, if you're paying taxes because you're making money.
That's okay.
That's, it is.
Yeah, that's okay.
That's what I say.
The question has come up too recently in our business where, you have one person being an executor or a power of attorney. I always try to tell people it's probably better to have two. What is your, like two power of attorneys so that there's, let's say I'm a family or I have 4 siblings or 5 siblings. Do you think having just one person do power of attorney or be the executor is better, or have 2 people?
Okay, I'll tell you. There's power of attorney. There's 2 of them. One's for property.
Correct.
One's for health, which we call personal care.
Okay.
The personal care one, you can have 1, 2. You would never just have one.
Right.
Because if you can't reach them and they're in a coma or whatever. So I would say there are at least 2. But you can put everybody, because it's jointly and severally, so you can reach somebody who obviously will hopefully make a good decision. For property, I always say, especially with siblings, you should have at least 2, and it should be joint. So we've got jointly and severally means anyone can act, listed. But for the property, I like the joint for the 2 people because somebody can't come back later and say, what was that check for $500? What did you do with that money? And if anything's going to cause problems in a family, it's going to be about money.
Right.
And it's not always, and I said this to one of my clients, it's not always the sibling that's the problem. It's somebody, some friend or
Spouse.
partner or whatever, whispering about are you sure? Like that person's in control. What's happening? It creates doubt. It's not worth it.
Right.
For property, I like 2 people at least. More than 2 is too. It's too many.
Right.
Because you got to go to the bank. You have to sign checks together. You have to do all this stuff.
Right. And getting more than 2 people together at one time sometimes is difficult too.
Yeah, and
Right.
especially for executors, because a power of attorney is good during life.
Right.
It ends when the person, I don't like the word dies, when they leave us.
Right.
When they leave us, and then the will takes over. And people they have 3 kids and 4 kids, and they want them all to be executors because they don't want someone to be left out. I mean, it's actually a job, and 4 people is not logistically very smart.
Right.
But I mean, sometimes they do it, and you do what they want them to do. But I always say to them, it's not really, logistically, it's difficult to get 4 people together.
Right.
Especially when one of them's in BC.
Right.
But
Right.
it
True.
happens.
True. And it's smart advice too. I think when we buy homes, a lot of times we're so overjoyed just getting that home that we don't think there's an end. We want to think about ourselves living forever, but we have to make these decisions now while we're in good health, while we're of sound mind. And I think a lot of times we forget to do that. And so it's super important. And you do the service as well. Not only do you deal with closing transactions, but you also set up wills and deal with estates. And it's kind of you like both. And you're a man of many hats. And it says,
a few hats.
It says a lot when you hear about Dan, being, 9 years as a, trustee. And I think we crossed paths, or you crossed paths with my parents from a printing company, Carriage House Printing.
Yes.
Way back when. I didn't know you personally, but you knew my mother.
I think the world of your mom.
Right.
I know her very well.
Right.
I love your mom's a great lady.
Yes, absolutely. And I'd like to say I take after her, but
I think you do. I think she's pretty proud of you.
yeah. So these are important things, to really think about when you're buying a house. And again, when you're choosing a lawyer, you really have to put, your head together, or wrap your head around paying the right price, because you get what you pay for, choosing the right lawyer. And it's why we've incorporated you within our listing presentation, because, it's not an easy task, buying a property from the offers to listing to staging. The lawyer is not the final piece of the puzzle, but he's part of it, and a very important part. And I think, when choosing a lawyer, you really have to look for someone like Dan. Daniel Hicks has been instrumental in the success of our business, and I might not have hit everything that we could talk probably for about 2 hours, but you have to get back to work because you have to do banking because you do it all.
Sometimes.
right. So
sometimes.
But I think my point was when you wear so many hats, that means that you are you love what you do. And you love being busy, and that's important. I've had Dan drive to Burlington, not advertising it, but I've had Dan drive to Woodbridge, track down a nephew of a deceased person from a mortgage from 1971.
Oh, yes.
Right?
Yes.
And so when a lawyer gives you their cell number and answers the phone on a Saturday and Sunday, that is through the top. I mean, that is unbelievable. So, choose the lawyer that is right the first time, just like choosing the right realtor. So I thank you for being that person for us. And if you want to get a hold of Dan, it's Dan Hicks at Kassabian Law. And I have, if you have any questions, DM me. We can put you in touch with Dan. And if you like this episode and you'd like to see more of it, just leave us a comment below and make sure to like us on YouTube. We feed on your comments. And thank you for watching. This has been another episode of the City Savvy Show, and thank you to Daniel Hicks for being part of that.
Well, I want to thank you, and I want to tell you that it's a pleasure to work with you and Jay Sell, because, you're on it, and you're involved in this thing.
Absolutely.
If somebody doesn't talk to the lawyer, you're there. You know what's going on every moment, before it starts, when it starts,
right,
and right through.
Absolutely.
So I know you're on top of it.
Thank you.
You provide service and caring to your clients, and you and JSL have a level of excellence that's just wonderful.
Thank
really.
you so much
No,
for
yeah,
saying
that's,
so.
No, that's true. That's
Yeah.
100%.
That's the curse of Dan being next to us, is that Jay Sullivan is always over there and knocking on the door and walking right into Dan's office, and so no, it's great, and we do not get paid a referral fee from Dan. This is true, accomplishments of you and for everything that Dan's done. And there's a reason why we use Daniel Hicks, and so many people in our 1,400, in our brokerage, we have almost 1,400 realtors, and so many people use your services. So you're a testament to what a good lawyer should be.
It's awfully kind of you.
Yeah, thank you.
That's nice. I appreciate it very, very much.
Again, YouTube, click, comment, and watch us over and over again. I've signed a contract with Fitigu for the rest of my life, which is never ending. We talk about death. And so they're counting on us to get those clicks. So thank you for watching.